Zombies, ghouls, revenants, the living dead. They're everywhere these days. They're in our comics, they're in our video games, they're on our cinema screens, they're on our TV screens, they're in novels. They're attacking older novels. They seem to be spreading everywhere like an unrelenting brainless plague that's harder to stop than a Britain's first post. But where did they come from, and how did they get here? The idea of the dead coming back to life stretches far back across time, way back into Babylonian mythology. The goddess Ishtar promises, "I will knock down the gates of the netherworld. I will smash the doorposts. I will leave the doors flat down. And I will let the dead go up and eat the living. And the dead will outnumber the living." And that itself would serve as a template for almost every single zombie apocalypse in modern fiction. But of course the word zombie doesn't come from the ancient Babylonians. It comes from the Caribbean, where West African folklore mixed with Catholicism to create Haitian Voodoo. The word zombie literally means spirit of the dead, and in Haitian folklore, bokers, or voodoo priests, possess the ability to resurrect the recently deceased through the use of a powder. In this folklore, however, zombies are not necessarily dead, more under the control of a voodoo priest and have no will of their own. In voodoo legend, feeding a zombie salt will make it return to the grave. The ghoul. The ghoul from Arabic folklore is not a member of the living dead, but they can possess dead bodies. They're more akin to demons or genies, not the Aladdin Robin Williams kind of a genie though. The reason they're important to the modern zombie is they're the first one on our list to actually be described as flesh eaters. They dwelled in places of the dead, graveyards, and ate the recently deceased. Ghouls are also described as shapeshifters. The revenants from European folklore are someone who come back from the grave, often with a purpose, more often revenge. The revenant and the vampire, however, are hard to distinguish in early folklore. What's interesting about these creatures is the only way to kill a revenant in most folklore is to either decapitate it or stake it through the head, which is the closest to the shoot it in the head mentality of the modern zombie. Another member of the living dead could be the mummy. Of course, these are not a part of our mythology of Egypt, but rather a product of Western fiction. One of the very first examples of a mummy in fiction is The Mummy, A Tale of the 22nd Century, written in 1827 by Jane Webb. In this story, an English adventurer reanimates a mummy using electricity. What's interesting is electricity was not used in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, written in 1811, but rather first shown to revive that creature in the 1931 film of the same name. Another story about a mummy is Lot 249 by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle of Sherlock Holmes fame. This story features a man with a grudge using a mummy as his own personal stooge to react his revenge. This example of the mummy had a profound influence on early horror movies of the 20th century, and Hollywood repeated literature by introducing us firstly to the living dead Frankenstein in 1931. Although not a zombie, he is clearly a member of the living dead, and of course spawned its own subgenre of science gone mad, which is still with us today. But the very first zombie movie is really White Zombie, 1932. This one featured the Haitian mindless zombies controlled by evil Bela Lugosi. The Mummy came in 1932 and The Ghoul in 1933, and countless other B-movie zombie flicks were made over the following years. In 1954, I Am Legend by author Richard Matheson was published. Although the creatures are described as vampires and Neville uses crucifix and stakes to kill them, the book was influential in the development of the zombie genre with the concept of a worldwide apocalypse due to disease. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, written in 1955, while not being about reanimated corpses at all, did facilitate the concept of the spread of human-like creatures, the loss of humanity and the fear of mobs. I Am Legend was adapted to film as The Last Man on Earth in 1964, starring veteran horror actor Vincent Price. The film was fairly faithful to the novel and was even written by Matheson himself. The book was also adapted as The Mega Man in 1971 and I Am Legend in 2007. Hammer Horror introduced audiences to perhaps the first gory zombie in The Plague of the Zombies 1966. These zombies for the first time were portrayed as walking corpses with decaying flesh, but they were still very much in line with the voodoo zombie, being slaves forced to work for a mine in Cornwall. In 1960, an independent horror movie took all that had come before it and redefined the living dead forever. Night of the Living Dead took the mindless zombies of voodoo, the flesh-eating ghouls of Arabic folklore, the revenants that can only be killed through destroying the head, and the virus-like apocalypse of I Am Legend and the Body Snatchers, mashed them all together and gave us the modern zombie. To this day, this is what everyone thinks of when you say the word zombie, not the original Haitian creature, even though the film never referred to the creature as zombies once. Romero's sequel kicked off a craze of low-budget zombie flick. In Italy, where the film was simply known as Zombie, Lucio Fulci made an unofficial sequel called Zombie 2. Ironic as this would serve more as a prequel. Zombie 2 was renamed Zombie for the US and the more over-the-top title of Zombie Flesh Eaters for the United Kingdom. In the 1980s, zombies very much became part of the popular culture, even appearing in Michael Jackson's 1982 music video Thriller. The creatures would go on to appear in countless more movies throughout the 1980s, cementing themselves as a core part of the horror genre. An interesting movie to come out at this time was The Serpent in a Rainbow by Nightmare on Elm Street director Wes Craven. This was an attempt to return to the original Haitian creature. The film was based on a non-fiction book of the same name, which was research into the scientific basis and the folklore surrounding the phenomena in the Caribbean. In the early 90s, the zombie genre began to slowly fade away in movies. It was in 1996 that the video game Resident Evil brought the shuffling zombie back into the consciousness of millions of young gamers. Resident Evil is as important in revitalizing the zombie genre as it was in popularizing the survival horror genre in video games. In the new millennium, 28 days later, again not strictly a Living Dead movie, was another evolution of the genre in the cinema, as this time the Infected ran, which was something new for those who hadn't seen Return of the Living Dead, that was. And this had an influence on Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake, followed by cult hit Shaun of the Dead. This new surge of life even brought zombie god George A. Romero back for Land of the Dead and even more Dead sequels. In Resident Evil 4, people were upset that there were no zombies. But hang on a minute, people robbed of their own will, forced to work and do the bidding of a powerful master? That's more like a zombie than the flesh eaters of the first games. Irony. It seems, however, that zombies' real home in the 21st century is in fact video games, which do seem to turn out a lot better than their cinematic counterparts. Aside from the Resident Evil franchise, we have Dead Rising, Left 4 Dead, Dead Island, and even zombie modes for Call of Duty and Red Dead Redemption. The Living Dead in comic books are nothing new, stretching back to early horror comics such as EC. The Walking Dead has spread to the mainstream in AMC's hit TV show of the same name. The modern zombie represents our fears of death, disease, mob mentality, and the loss of humanity. The enduring aspect of the zombie is the fact that it has managed to progress from the supernatural into the science fiction realm, making it more palatable for a less superstitious age.